get going. Okay.
It's really cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in. Please make sure that you're comfortable with your distancing and everything. And I can see everything clean and clean again. So we're all good to go. Thank you so much, Mark, for presenting.
I had a shower. I had a shower as well. It is Saturday.
All right.
So hello, Zoomers. I'm going to be talking to these guys, but now and again I'll say hello to these guys down there. This is a bit of a first for me, so I haven't taken into account the fact that I was going to have this picture in the corner, so some of the bits of the slides might get me stuck in front of them. But anyway, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit today because I have this much information, and anyone that knows me knows I can talk under wet cement for about 6 hours if you just let me go. But because I've got to compress it into an hour and give you as much knowledge as I can, I've got notes here to make sure that actually happens. So, hello. I'm Mark Wilson and I'm an architect. I hate renovations. That's a good start. Don't leave, you're in the right room. Sorry about that. So why do I hate renovations? They are hard. There's less options than a new house. It's really hard to achieve the ideal design. And as you get closer to the city, that gets harder and harder. So I love big acreage sites with fantastic views and no complaints. I can design whatever I want. Every architect does. They do the same thing in Dubai, right in the city, but they all compete with each other. But as we get closer and closer to the city, we have more rules and regulations, more restrictions, smaller lots, town planning regulations, character codes, all sorts of things. That just makes my work more harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. So it's literally probably 5 times as much work as a really nice house on a really nice site, which are the ones I love. But I can't charge my client 5 times as much to do one of those jobs, can I? I charge them a little bit more, so never make any money out of them. So why am I here? Well, the renovations I have done can be very, very satisfying. I love changing people's lives. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to educate you, because I get really frustrated by the television shows that come out and tell you that renovations are really easy. We've all watched The Block and it all happens overnight and it's no hassle. I'm here to tell you today that renovations are really, really, really hard. And don't underestimate. Who's done a renovation before? Who says they're really hard? Who never wants to do them again? Who's here to hope that I can show them the easy way to do it? Okay, sorry. I'll try. Okay, so I'm going to give you a practitioner's perspective. Not only am I an architect, but I'm a hands-on architect too. So I'm one of these guys that loves going on site, and if the subby says it can't be done, I say, do you want me to show you? They hate that. And most of the time, 95% of the time, they're not going to take the chance, because if I do a better job than them, it's pretty embarrassing. But I'll get in there and I'll swing a hammer and I'll show them. And if it's not good enough, I'll do it in front of them and say, that's how I want it done. Okay, so let's get back on the topic a little bit. They wanted me to talk about, so I normally talk about new houses, so I'm going to talk about renovations. Okay, so let's look at the move or improve options. So option 1, sell your existing house and buy a new one and move into it as is. Option 2, stay where you are and improve the existing house. Or option 3, sell your existing house, buy a new one and move into it and improve it before or after moving in. We've done it before, you don't want to do it after moving in because that's a nightmare. Okay, so you need to work out what your needs are. What is the best solution, your requirements? Would an architect be any use? And how do you find the right one? So the question is it better to improve my existing house or move to a better one? First of all, you need to compare all the other houses around there and to see if there's a better dream home for you. So you need to look at real estate websites. I'm a real estate tragic, I love real estate. But I love it when clients come to me, I can say what their house is worth now, what's going to be worth when it's finished. I can give them some informed advice whether I think it's worthwhile. You'd be surprised that 80% of the time I talk clients out of doing the project, at least. You say it's not worth it, you won't get your money back. I could be wrong, but I just think the risks are too high. The construction is going to be too hard. If you love it, stay there. But they've got to convince me that they love it that much, they should stay there if it doesn't make economic sense. So you do your research and find out what the likely price of your house is and your dream home. Now this sounds really obvious, but too many of us get emotionally involved and don't think this through logically. Oh, rightio. So on the move option, The first problem is the true value of our existing house is always overestimated. Why is that? Because we've got many hours of sweat equity and improvements in it. We've copied the stuff we've seen on the block and done that to a house, so it's got to be worth more. But you'd be surprised, a lot of these things that people do to their houses adds little to the sale price sometimes. It may even detract from the true market value, because what you think is lovely, the rest of the market does not, particularly if the herd's moved on. Because it's your home, it's worth more to you than to anyone else. So if we're going to move further, allowance has to be made for upgrade figures like miscellaneous building inspections, removal costs, conveyancing, real estate agent's commission, sale of the existing property, stamp duty. I mean, actually not too bad in Queensland compared to some other states. So Grand Designs has shown us that the dream home ends up costing several thousand more than expected many of the time. So you don't want your dream home end up costing twice as much as you ever dreamed it would. So the second problem is, be wary of any estimate that's given with no final plans or commitment. At the end of the day, all quotes are meaningless unless they're by someone's prepared to sign a contract for that amount with proper documents. Now, I know all too often, too many people go out and get 3 quotes on some little sketch on the back of a napkin. Telling you now that's a total waste of time. You waste the builder's time, you waste everybody's time, including your own. At the end of the day, the builder's got to go out to at least 8 trades, maybe 10 trades. The only way you're going to get the best price is if each and every one of those trades wants the job. If one of them doesn't want the job or he's too busy, they'll be reflected in the final price. So you need this perfect scenario. I've had so many jobs in my career where the builders come back to the price and they go, nah, it's too high. Now, I actually ask for a trade breakdown and I go through the trades and I say to them, your plasterboard price is wrong. I bet you only got one price. No way. Yeah, how'd you know that? Because it's wrong. It's too expensive. You just pull that out of the air based on a previous job, and I can compare it to other projects and other quotes. They come back and I can tell you every time they go, yeah, you're right. They're so shocked when it's so obvious to me. What's important to me is I get the right price. I reiterate, to get the right price, all the trades have got to want to do it. I had one builder that was always loyal to one trade, and he missed out on every job because that trade was too expensive. And I told him year after year after year, and eventually I said, talk to this guy, get a second price from him. He's been using that tradie ever since, and he started winning projects. He's just too loyal to one person, and it cost him every single job. So quotes are meaningless unless someone's prepared to sign on that. Okay, the second thing is the fact remains that the market prices of new homes or renovated homes usually reflect the cost of the renovation. So when you sell yours and you get something better, they're pretty close to intrinsic value. There's no bargains out there. You just can't go out. Someone's going to renovate it. The only time you get is there's been a divorce, they've gone overseas or something like that. It's like a car. Yeah, it's just the market intrinsically is priced pretty right. So the main reason to consider staying put and doing a renovation is because you love the area, you love the street, or you love the neighbours. There's another reason we'll come back to later on. So at the end of the day, the decision to stay is probably not necessarily financial. Also, once the initial romance period with your new upgraded house is over, you may begin to notice things you did not notice when you went to buy it, because we're all emotionally attached and we gloss over and don't see the things falling off the wall or the potential problems. I've just been through this with my son and my daughter, looked at houses for 6 months, and I can look at Google and go, nah, 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 nah. So if you are looking at this, here's my rule, 100-10-2. You must look at 100 properties on the internet. Go through your checklist, you'll find 10 that meet your criteria, 2 that are worthwhile actually going and have a look at, and possibly getting a building inspection on. Because I just go through money pit, money pit, money pit, things I could just see nothing but trouble. And when your children are involved and you're saying to them, that's rubbish, and they're emotionally engaged in it, and you're saying, listen, this is what I do, you're not buying it. It's a very interesting process to go through, but it gives me the knowledge that I've got today. You know, you break their heart, you know, and I've got a building inspection guy that's fantastic. And I said to him, I refer him to people all the time and say, he's good. He'll rip out your heart, stomp on it, break your heart, and dash your dreams, but he won't miss anything. And he said, I'm not put that on my you. Because, you know, he'd look at something and he'd see stuff that I missed. And you go, wow, okay, that's why you do it full time. Okay, So when you move into these houses, you start seeing these things and think, why did I do this for? And all of a sudden you've got to renovate the house that you thought was already renovated. We'll talk about that more. Or you've got to start putting sweat equity back in, which is where it just came from. So if you move further out to a better house and you've got to spend money fixing it up, it's been a waste of time. So this is where the move and improve option comes in. Could be the best option if you buy it at the right price. Okay, so what is the process? First of all, we define the problem. I have a 15-page checklist which defines the constraints. It's a dynamic document. For you at home there, you can get it online. If you're here, you can get it online as well. I give away lots and lots of free stuff because it's about education. It's a dynamic document I use with my clients, and it often raises more questions than answers. Now, that's not a bad thing. If you've got an answer without the right question, then it's possibly wrong. You need to ask the right question and get the right answer. Then we design the solution. I use 3D computer modeling, have done for 25, 30 years, to come up with a solution. So here you can see I've actually got some renderings. So that's a rendering, and that's it. And that's the finished product. That's a rendering, finished product, rendering, finished product. So computer generated imaging. Now you can tell which ones are computer generated because they by and large got furniture in them. And by the end of the job, by the time they paid me, the clients can't afford furniture. It's not a prerequisite, but it can happen. Okay. So we actually cut sections. What's important to me is you really understand what kind of building that you're actually really getting. Now, I'm actually making these far less photorealistic. Now, that in the old days, you used to take renders all night long, but now I'm becoming less precious about making them look exactly like it, because then the clients go and actually pick the same fan and want to use the same colours and all that sort of stuff. So I'm having an undue influence on the clients, and I don't like doing that. So I'm actually making them less realistic these days for that very reason. And as we get Google helmets and all that stuff, we'll be able to walk around and so forth. The beauty about these images, they're still 2D images. You don't get the peripheral feeling of the spaces that are created, but maybe eventually we will. Okay, so let's get on to the grand renovation for your forever home. I truly believe you can redesign your home, make it a forever home. So what do I mean by that? We want to design for the climate. We've got the most beautiful climate in Australia, which is why everyone from Victoria is going to be coming here next year, and then everyone from Sydney. Nothing to do with COVID? Yeah, it is. Okay. We've got to design for function. It has to suit our requirements now, and not just my mate resale. So everyone does this stuff for resale. So many people do up their house, they've been living in it for 25 years, they do it up for resale. Why don't you do it up for yourself? And what if Reese has got different taste to you? It just seems crazy to me, you know? Anyway, that's what we do. Unfortunately, we're all victims of fashion, so I was going to wear my other big, specky glasses that are fashionable, but they don't read as well as these ones, so I can't say I'm a victim of fashion anymore. Anyway, a good example of people like me that are age challenged. In the 80s, a sign of success was to have a really big spa in your ensuite. In the 70s, it was to have an ensuite. In the 80s, they had a really, really big triangular one in the ensuite, because in the movies, they fill them full of, champagne and flowers and stuff like that. And all my clients that came to me in the 20s went, make sure there's no spa in the ensuite. And it's because the things are just useless. They collect dust, they collect lots of little curly things and all sorts of stuff. And they never get used, because by the time you actually fill them
Sorry,
up,
Saran, I can't hear.
it lost the moment anyway. It's like, you don't see it in the movies, they walk straight into, like Americans, there's always ice in the thing, hey? The spa's always full with things floating in it. We just sit there and wait for an hour to fill up, and, by the time then, you're drunk, you're too drunk to do anything anyway, so it's like, forget that. So I'm just saying that things change. And now what's happened now, the circle of life with the Matata, now they're advertising, let's make the kids' bedroom into a grey big home spa. It's the same thing, it's just moved rooms, right? And even better, they make one of those freestanding ones that I can't get in. As well. They put up against the wall so you can't clean the dust around underneath it and all that sort of stuff. It's like, fashion victims, no, none of us are. No, it's just crazy. But there is one good thing about turning the kids' bedroom into a home spa. It stops them coming back. I actually think it's not a bad idea. If you're going to put a spa, put it in the main bathroom. Not in the ensuite. Ensuite, you make it for you, but you make main bath. Everyone can use it instead of having to traipse through your bedroom. Does that make sense? Yeah. And make it like one you can fill up. I actually do have a spa bath in my place. It's really narrow and really shy, so when I've got a bad back, I fill it up in about 10 minutes, and yeah, I feel better and hop out of it. And the spa guy kept saying, it's too small for you. I said, no, it's not, because I can fill it up without feeling guilty about wasting 2 buckets of water. So anyway, that's just me. You get to know I'm just me. Okay, design for site. We need to design for site. So a lot of these points I'm going to come back in a little bit more detail. We also need to design things to last. It's all about maintenance costs. So now we've got LED lights. Before, remember, we used to have fluoro, we had incandescent, we had fluoros. Now we've got LEDs. And they were really expensive when they first came out, but they're about 20% dearer. And they last forever, if you get the right ones, of course. So you don't need to get the electrician out to fix them all the time. Now, I used to be a hater of fans. I used to hate those fans because they were noisy and they're big and ugly, but they've got these nice DC ones now, which are quiet. You got 3 different color LED lights on them, got timers on them, all sorts of stuff. I think they're great. So it's a really good thing. The other good thing about DC fans, just those that don't know, if you've got you want to put an AC fan into a bedroom, you've got to loop another wire back, one for the light and one for the fan. You put a DC in, no extra wiring. And uses one wire. So you actually save $100 on the electrician putting the wire in. You pay $150 more for the fan. But, you know, on balance, this is not a bad option. Just learnt that one. Okay, so how many, and getting baby boomers here, how many baby boomers thought that all the kids had left the nest and it was all empty, right? You know, and a lot of them come back, don't they? They'll leave at 90 or 20 and come back 1 or 2 years later and stay till 27 till 29, right? You know what they call them, don't you? Kids with baby boomers? Boomerangs. Yeah, they keep coming back. I had one client that the child stayed there till they were 35. There you go. So who here thinks size is important? I do. Mind you, we thought that was phone evolution, didn't we? Remember those big brick phones that were smaller and smaller? Who picked that they were going to get bigger and bigger and bigger again? Nobody, right? Seriously? Well, you know, it's a bit like Moses. Why got that tablet up against your ear for? Right? I don't understand that. But you can't pick trends, can you? So, you know, I went to a shop and said, I want something to replace my Windows phone. I want something small. And the guy looked at me like I was the Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know, it's like, what a dinosaur. I want a big thing. Okay, so clients know what they want, or at least they think they know what they want. They always ask for more. After all, they're upgrading, right? The thing is, it's simple math. You add a metre to each room, each way, that's an extra 36% in size. Simple math, 4 by 4, 16, 5 by 25, 36% more. So that's a 30% increase in building costs. So then it's the architect's fault when it comes out with budget because the client wanted every room a metre bigger. A good architect will tell you, can't do that, it's going to cost you too much. At the beginning, not at the end. So you need to work out which rooms actually need to be bigger, which ones can be smaller. Now, when you're renovating an existing house, this makes it really difficult because you've got walls in the wrong place. The older houses, the rooms are too small. If you combine 2 of them, they're too big. If you try and move it halfway in between, it costs you too much. So you're really restricted. Remember I said about how hard renovations are? So you end up with rooms that are too small and too big and just a little bit awkward and the planning doesn't work because it costs too much to fix it. Okay. The secret thing is to put hypothetical furniture, practical hypothetical furniture in each of the rooms so you know how you're going to use them. You'd be surprised how that allows you to reduce the size of the room if you think about how it's going to be furnished. Sure, furniture trends change. We're now going to have these lounges that have got no backs in them and with big shades on them so our backs kill ourselves. You know, but we're not victims of fashion. No. I've seen so many houses for sale that have got 3 or 4 or 5 rooms with furniture in them and nowhere to put the TV because the rooms are basically corridors. We've all seen it, haven't we? Okay, it gets worse. Standard homes are square for a reason. It reduces the wall to floor ratio, so it makes it cheaper. So if you go from square to a simple one of those shapes, it increases the floor to wall ratio, which increases the cost. So the bigger the square, the more void space there is in the middle, and less external walls, less bricks, less external windows, which makes the open plan with less internal walls, which makes it cheaper to build. That is why specky houses have the kitchen right in the middle, because that means no windows and it makes it cheaper to build. They sell it to you as a design feature, It's actually a cost feature. It's what makes the house cheaper. And who wants the kitchen stuck right in the middle of the house with no light, no ventilation, all the lights on? So, you know, I think it's one of the worst things. But the kitchen's got to be in here east so you get the nice morning sun come in, you know. Anyway, it's a design decision. It's an economic decision to solve as a design decision. So when it comes to site on existing houses, the limitations are there again. It's even worse. We've got side boundary clearances, the building's in the wrong spot. So we've got to end up with an awkward shaped building by default because of where the house is positioned on the site and we can't afford to move it, right? So I hate them. But wait, it gets worse. Ceiling heights are the next problems. If you're an old Queensland's got big ceiling heights, you want big ceiling heights. If you're in an old house with low ceiling heights, you want bigger ceiling heights. So everyone opts for the ceiling. Now that adds significantly to the cost because it increases the wind loading on the framing, so you need bigger framing and sometimes structural steel. Breaking ceilings make that even worse because there's no lateral stability for the bracing. So again, that adds to the cost. So the building has to be made stronger. So all these nice things all add to the cost. How we going? How we going down there? Is anyone logged off yet, Sarana? That's good, that's good. Okay, what about materials? My friend over here that takes all the brochures, he looks materialistic, doesn't he? Yeah. So higher quality materials cost significantly more. So why do we settle for less? Those materials that give old buildings character are also more expensive, both to match and restore. So old houses have a lot of VJs in them. And VJs are terrible things. If you want to paint them, if you don't silicone each VJ and you paint it light, it looks horrible because all the gaps are there and it looks terrible. They're actually better off resheeting with fake VJ because at least that gives you a chance to run some electrical wiring and modernise the house. It's sad, but that's the way it is. Now, in this particular house, all the screens and battens and shutters and fence and everything are aluminium. The client didn't want any more maintenance on this old Queenslander house. Everything in that photo is aluminium, would you believe? But aluminium is expensive. That's what you're thinking, weren't you? Why would you do that? So why specify an expensive, better quality material? When you're doing a renovation or a new house even, and renovation is actually worse. In a new house, half of it's labour, half of it's materials. In a renovation, 2/3 of it is labour. You've got to pull the old stuff out and put the new stuff back in and then materials. So you're probably better off paying for better quality materials because the last thing you want to do is have to come back and pull it out again and replace it again. Third time round, you usually go, yeah, maybe I'll use better quality materials. And then we add it up and go, nah, we won't. This is why architect design houses cost more because the architects specify better quality materials. A good architect would anyway. So, and then again, it comes back to the quotes. If the builders quote normal rubbish and not what the architect specified, the price is going to alter. So you've got to ask yourself, should I pay extra for the materials? So let me ask you a question. You go to Bunnings and you want to buy some screws. You've got some nice zinc plated ones, some galvanised one, some galvanised class 3 and some stainless steel. Now, ironically, the stainless steel looks very close to the zinc plated. The zinc plated is the cheapest, the galvanised is the next, the galvanised class 3 is the next, and the stainless steel is the dearest. We're probably talking 5 times. Of course, they look the same. Everyone buys the zinc plated. I call that just before rust, because it lasts about a year before it starts to rust, okay? But they look the same. And even galvanised. You go to Bunnings, you've got galvanised, and you go, oh, well, galvanised is the same, and galvanised class 3. Why do you think they've got galvanised and galvanised class 3? Because the smart person knows galvanised class 3 is better than galvanised. Because the galvanised is like, oh, there's a screw, hit with the galvanised gun as it goes past. Whereas class 3 has been dipped and made sure it's coated. They're all dearer. You know which ones I buy? The dearest. And the builder goes, oh, no, even internally, let's use this. No, I'm going to use this because I don't want to have to replace it. If it rusts out in the substrate, so it's only as strong as the weakest link, which is the screw, right? Don't get screwed by picking the wrong screw. But wait, there's more. What about windows and doors? More glass means more dollars. More sashes, that's the opening bits. More dollars. More security screens, more dollars. Beautiful timber instead of aluminium, more dollars. Or even timber look aluminium, oh, here again. Thicker sections of aluminium with better rollers cost more. And what about shutters? Yep, these are all aluminium. Because the client didn't want to have to replace them. And I've actually got some on display here in the building design, so they've got some really good displays here. Now, not all windows are created equal. I had a job once where the client said, I found these really, really cheap windows, and I had a look at them. They had a silicon slide on the bottom, no rollers. So when the silicon slide wore out, the window was not going to be able to open and shut. It was 10 grand. The windows I specified were 24. I said, well, that's fine. You know, I'll replace them in 3 years, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's not going in on one of my jobs, I'm sorry. I just won't have them come back to me later on and say, you let me put them in. I won't. Then we've got all those stacking doors instead of single doors. Retractable screens. Retractable screens cost significantly more than normal screens. Again, there's several ones on display here, but they're way dearer than normal screens, right? And people have all these great big alfresco doors and all this stuff. Again, I might be stupid, but bringing it outside in at my house means snakes, possums, birds, cats, I mean, I sit in my yard and the snake walked underneath my leg, and, my screens are to keep the vermin out, So I want to have some big openings and design the house properly so the outside comes in without literally coming in. That'd be a good idea, don't you think? That's the way I design houses anyway. So this is all adding up. That's another 5 or 10%. Any accountants in the audience? Anyone on top of all this yet? Are you crying? No. So why do we do it? Why do we include all these extras? Are we high or just constantly drunk? Architects, seriously. After all, these houses are required to have star ratings, but that's not really the answer, is it? I mean, who wants to live in an Esky or a chili bin? Anyone from across the ditch here? Or I don't know. Okay. We really want to design for thermal comfort, which is why we see architects come up with step plans for more light and airflow. Higher walls for more light and airflow, more and larger openings for more light and airflow, even though shut them so they keep the vermin out. Higher ceilings, more light and airflow. These are ways to bring the outside in and extend the inside spaces outside. So I just showed this. See, this tiny little odd house was, I was commissioned to, the client was sitting in that seat. I talked many years ago, and they designed me the best environmentally designed house I could design. And that's why it's weird shape, because I think I did everything possible to make it rate 9 stars. So I thought, that's good. Perfectly orientated, worked out the overhangs to control the sun, double glazing, low air glass, massive roof wall insulation, in-floor heating, and reverse block veneer. Ticked all the boxes. And reverse block veneer, reverse block veneer, what's that? Okay, so we actually put the blockwork on the inside. So normally have a stud frame and put the masonry on the outside. We put the masonry on the inside and put the stud frame on the outside. Now, it sounds really silly, dumb architects, but that way you can actually insulate the outside and put the blockwork on the inside. Again, National Masonry have got some blockwork displays here. They actually can polish those. So in the bathroom, that's all I've got is a polished wall, and the bedroom is a polished wall. So you've been in a cave, and it feels beautifully and comfortable in summer. It's nice and cool, and in winter it's actually nice and warm. That's called thermal mass. So that's affecting the house to keep it a perfect temperature. So I thought I ticked all these energy boxes, and you, like me, would be surprised at model 5.5 stars, which at the time was the lowest possible rating. And I couldn't understand that. This might surprise you, but the current regulations are written by the brick people and the glass people and the cladding people on the basis that every house is air conditioned. So the energy efficiency regulations are written on the premise that you need small windows so the air conditioner doesn't have to work as hard, keeping it warm or cool. As soon as you put lots of glass and lots of openable windows in, your energy rating goes through the floor. Architects hate it because we get really, really poor energy ratings despite the fact that we know it's going to work. So on this particular house, I spent 1 week's research just deciding what glass I wanted to use. Because again, the glass is designed to do one of two things. When you're living down south, it's designed to have the heat come in and get trapped. When you're living up here, it's designed to reflect the heat out and never get in. But what if you want both? It's really, really hard to find glass. Now, this house is at Stanthorpe. They've had snow on the site and it's been 40 degrees. So I wanted to do both. So it took a week's research to find the glass, and they really pushed through all the glass people to find someone. Eventually I said, this is the one I think. And the guy goes, yeah, I think you're right. Well, you're the expert. Anyway, so we actually built it. It got the 5.5 energy rating. When we actually analysed it, bits of the house actually, some rooms got 9 stars, some got 7, and a bit in the middle Let me just go back one. A bit in the middle there. Got 2 stars, and it was the best part of the house. So again, and the reason was, under the standard regulations, if you actually, to get a rating out, you had to enclose it on 3 sides and leave one side permanently open. And that doesn't work real well in winter. And, you know, so if I had left it permanently open, I would have got a better rating, but I wanted the flexibility to open it or shut it. And the rating, so they just nailed me on rating. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, so I said to the client, well, we can spend lots of money getting someone more intelligent and he said, no, it's going to work. It'll be fine. Luckily, I had a nerd client. And so he's been monitoring the temperature in that house ever since he lived in it. This here is in summer. So this big wave here is the summer temperature. So that's up to 40 degrees up here or something. I was out for 6 days in a row. So 4 days in a row with 36. See this little green thing here? That's the internal temperature of the house. So it's constantly 10 degrees cooler. Even after 4 days of 36 degrees, it was 10 degrees. So it hit 29, but as soon as the storm came, it plummeted back down to 23 and it was absolutely beautiful. And then in winter, this is the winter temperature. That's minus there. Here's the house. 15 is as cold as it got. No heating. So it works absolutely true. I go down there, you can just wear a t-shirt and pants every day, except when you go outside, you get a bit of a shock. But it works. It's really good having a nerdy client because I said it's going to work. And he made sure it was going to work. He even sort of said, I said, this is how father's son's going to come into this room. And he took note of that and monitored it and made sure it did happen. Anyway, it's fun. So how do we design for climate? Let's look at some basic principles. Let's imagine the perfect scenario. That's always the easiest one. We've got a north-facing site. Now, the cooling breezes normally come from the northeast, right? Around here, anyway, it changes when we run the state. And the afternoon breezes come from the southeast. And that's usually pretty good unless you live on the coast, and that drives you crazy because it's too much and it makes your windows all mucky. And then we've got our westerlies come this way and our storms come that way. So if we know what things are happening, we can actually handle that by closing off from this side, opening on that side, and feeding the ventilation through. So we know what the rules are. Now, everyone knows the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, right? Something that's fairly consistent. What most people don't realise that in summer, it actually comes from here, from the southeast, and sets in the southwest. In winter, it's northeast and northwest. In summer, it's 86 degrees. In winter, it's 39 degrees. So we know that, so we can articulate the house. Remember that funny shaped house? It's articulated so no summer sun gets in, but all the winter sun gets in. That's part of the reason it performs, along with the reverse block veneer and 50 other things that I did at the same time. Well, just on that one, by the way, we actually have got heated walls. So I've got wires that are put in the block walls on the inside, so I can heat them up so they act like radiators. We've never turned them on because it's never got cold enough. At -5. We go down there, we barely turn the fireplace on because it doesn't get cold enough. It's really heartbreaking. And so look at put verandas all around the outside of the house. That's the solution. No, it's not, because you don't get the winter sun in. And, you know, so we need to. That's why they end with that funny shape. Rightio. Right, Zoomers, you still there? Anyone logged off yet? They're still there? I didn't hear anything. I think they're all gone.
Yes. No. Here.
That's good. Okay. Now, if you take one thing away today, I want you to see these little tiny things up here. These are wind boxes. I want you to take one thing away. I want you to think about air as acting like water. So imagine these were put in a fish tank and you had water running through one direction. This is what happens. So up here you'll find if you've got one window opening, that fills up, gets a negative pressure, no more air gets into your house. Here, if you've got a window opening, it flows through. Here, if you've got two windows, there's no way of getting out, no air gets in. Here, so in a straight line, it runs straight through your house. Here, if the windows are there, none of it goes through. Here, if it's there, so you can see, it acts like water. The best one is here, we've got windows there and run through. Or, even better, what I've done here. See what happens here? The air comes through, it gets compressed because the opening gets smaller and smaller, which speeds up the air, which makes it work brilliantly. And it actually pulls the air out of these bits of the house in through there and pulls in from the eaves and just ventilates beautifully. So summer it works an absolute treat. Oh, what happens in winter? We shut that, which the regulations say I can't do. And then this heats up and the sun comes to here and heats that up. And at night, the fireplace gets turned on and radiates through the rest of the house. So think about air like water, okay? That's the one thing I want you to think about. So we want to be able to control the sunlight in and we want to keep it out in summer. We use that with overhangs. So again, This house was a little bit tricky. I've actually got adjustable things on the west here, so I can slide them if I really want to. And they're actually slotted, so I still get the view, but it keeps the sun out. Okay, so I mentioned the breeze solarium. That's actually this. It's a term I made up. Half a breezeway and half a solarium. So that's what I call it. So it's a combination of breezeway and solarium. So it's in the center of the house. It's totally shaded. And basically it's a veranda in the middle, which is a bit odd, but it actually works extraordinarily well. Again, it's a silly idea. You need a good client to come up with silly ideas, right? So that's what actually happened. And in winter, it captures and warms up. Works absolutely perfectly. This house actually won a regional and a state award at the QMBA for sustainability. So I was pretty happy to actually be recognised for all the hard work that went into that. Okay, next important thing. You must plan your alterations, not just in plan. They've got to be designed in 3D. If you design them in plan and got no idea what they're going to look like, then they will actually look like you had no idea what they're going to look like. So what could possibly go wrong? You know, a carpenter's got to cut it, you know, measure it twice, cut it once. And an architect with 3D, I can model it and remodel it and remodel it and remodel it until it's perfect, because it's so much easier to do that now than in the old days. So we've got to make sure we get it right in 3D. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, this one here, I love the way they renovated that and made a real feature of that toilet stack. If you didn't see it before, you're certainly going to see it now. But the other one I really like is this carport here. We really couldn't fit in a 2-car carport, so we made it 1.5 and covers the kitchen window. So when you're in here, you can look in the garage to make sure that your rubbish is still there. And as it builds up to the window, it doesn't matter what's coming in through there anyway. And the other feature I like is here, rather than put a bigger beam, and we'll put a pole in. So that was probably good when pole dancing was really popular. And but I suppose the good thing is the olive oil is not far away, is it? So that's probably a good thing too. So you know, you've got to think about this sort of stuff, because when you come to resell the house, what do you think the buyer's going to come in and go, well, I like that idea? Pole, and I can see it from the garage as well. Okay. So, in addition to the difficulty of designing for climate, particularly in an existing house, sloping sites make it really difficult as well, increasing the need for a good design input. So I've got a saying, if it's easy, go to a, you know, someone else. If it's hard, go to an architect. Now, there's some really good building designers out there that know this stuff really well, and a lot of them own and run their own businesses. So I'm not denigrating them. It's horses for courses. I've always had really challenging jobs, and I wouldn't have it other way. I'd get bored. It was an easy job. I'd get bored and I wouldn't want to do it anyway. And in fact, 3 of these houses are in the same street. That one, and that one in the same street. So I took the worst house in the street, which had been previously renovated, had a really nice green kitchen, really nice purple bathroom with a spa in it. And the guy's wife absolutely hated it. I said, this is fantastic, because no one else is going to want to buy it. So it was actually the worst house and the cheapest house, and they spent $140,000 renovating. And it's just like, so they got none of that back because everything else was awful. So we came in and totally transformed. If I showed you the photo of that house before, and it's actually that one, you wouldn't know. That's actually the original renovation, and all the fronts new. So, and as a result, I got 5 houses in the street. So eventually I got, you know, everyone in the street. I thought, we have to move on. I'm getting too friendly with the whole street. Now, in these examples, they're actually 1930s house, a 1940s house, a 1960s house, a 1970s house, and a 1980. Some were lifted up and built underneath. One had a 2nd story and one had a 3rd story. By the way, can't do that in Brisbane anymore. Don't know why. Brisbane gets flooded, they increase the height. This is not a good example. This one here, I didn't get town planning approval to go that far over the, at the time, 7.8 metres height. Now you can go 9.5 metres across the road and block out his view. And it's on top of the hill, so there's no flooding. So they let us go to 9.5 metres now, but we can't build 3 stories anymore. So if you've got a house with 3 stories, hold on to that, because the guy next door can't build 3 stories. Because the public said they don't like that. It's just like, you know, strange things happen. Okay. One of them was actually staged. So yeah, this one was staged. We did stage 1 for 38 grand. We probably could have done the whole lot for about 68 or something like that. 10 years to the day, you're not going to believe this, I was carrying the drawings out, Deb said, get rid of some of your stuff. I was carrying the rubbish out to the bin and my phone rang. I put it down and went and answered the client, said we're ready for stage 2. I joke you not. So guess how much stuff I've thrown out since. Anyway, we did stage 2 10 years later. Stage 2 cost $164,000 when it would have cost 28.
Ooh.
But luckily, we'd actually designed that in stage 1. So it would have cost 200 had we not designed for it in stage 1. So there you go. So some of them are weatherboard, some of them are blockwork. One's cavity brick, one's brick veneer. So yeah, I said I hate renovations, but I've done some nice ones over the time. This one was actually a 1960s architect design. So see that bit there? A little bit of block, that's the original house. And we just built over the top of it. And in fact, that client came to me and they'd spent $140,000 on renovating it and said, ready for stage 2? And I said, no, you're ready for stage 1. We've got to knock down what you've just done. I said, all right. So they had to work really, really, really hard to keep what they've just done. I wish I did. But it was like, get your advice early. Okay. Design for accessibility. Now we need to design for accessibility. Our needs are changing. We need to stay at home as long as possible. It's going to be a forever home. You want to think what could happen to you. I'm getting old now, so I'm thinking about this sort of stuff. But we don't want our houses to look like a hospital, do we? You know, in these retirement villages, when they sell one of them, they pull all the rails and stuff out of the toilets so they don't look like old people live there. It's really strange. So we have to design it so it doesn't affect good old resale again. So I had one of the clients on the previous one call me back 12 years later. Now, I'm a bit of a control freak. You guess that? So the client wasn't game to change the colour scheme when they repaint without talking to me. So they talked me out, so we won't change the colour scheme. Yeah, that's good, came out. And I had noticed that in this 3-story house, that the kitchenette on the top level was starting to look more like a kitchen. And so with a bit of investigation, I realised that going up and down the 3 stories was just too difficult. You know, can I have some sauce? You know, so I thought, well, you know, so when I came to do the colour scheme, we ended up designing where the lift should go. Because when they worked out the costs of having to sell the house, pay for stamp duty, agents fees, yada, 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 rid all those costs, but cheaper to put a lift in. So on my own bad, next day I sent them through a sketch that, oh, this is where the lift's going to go. And I went, what? So well, you don't want to move, do you? No. So we end up putting a lift in, and then I did the colour scheme. As a result, every house I do, I try to think where the lift would go. So I did one for one of my clients on the Sunshine Coast, 3 stories, which you could do then. And I designed the space for the lift, put the doors in, had 3 storerooms. And then 4 years later, they put a lift in, 65 grand, bang, just brought it in. Don't have to crane them in anymore, let's bring them through the doors. So you've got to think about that, you never know. So you've got to make it so it looks nice. This one's even got one of those Queenslanders. This one's actually got BJs behind him. Get out of the way! Got a BJ in there. So it could still actually match in with the house. It had to have some aluminium, of course. Right, yeah. Oh, just one other thing. When we talk about disability, I had the privilege of doing the job for a guy that was severely disabled, and I thought, read my AS 1428, but it's just a disability standard. Went through all this stuff, and the client said, you're an idiot. And he said, there's no such thing as a standard disabled person. And he's absolutely right. The regulations actually applicable to no one. And I did his house, not one of the things in the house complied with the same standard. So I put the lift, I want to put the ramp down to the house, too long. What if I leave something in my car? Got to go up and down this, so make it steeper. He said, I can manage the steeper one, I've got electric wheelchair. So yep, do that. So everything in the house was specifically changed for him, none of it the conformity of the Australian standards specifically written for him. Interesting, isn't it? And then you've got to fight people against this stuff and say, well, it doesn't work. There's no such thing as a standard disabled person. Anyway, so there you go. You live and learn. Okay, how are we going? How are we going down there, Zoomers? Death by PowerPoint, hey? Death by PowerPoint online. Right. Okay, this is a building procurement flowchart. If my friend in the front here hasn't stolen them all, there's a couple here. Also on the website, so you can get that. You guys can get on the website, it's all free, and it's not on the exam. Now, it's just a flowchart of the building procurement process. Now, I'm not doing that I'm doing that because I'm anal. I'm not doing that because I'm just trying to scare you, but each one of those things actually links to another checklist, which basically spells out all the things you need to remember. Go through that. There might be just one thing that saves your bacon. You go, oh, forgot about that. Terrific. Great. I'm happy. So for myself, when I do a job, I break down to 14 stages, because then the client gets sick of me at any stage, they can just leave and pay me and move on. What generally happens is they say, well, I'll pay you up to here, and by the time we're here, they won't pick a tap without talking to me, because I'll talk for about half an hour about which tap to buy and why. Okay, now the important thing is tendering and contract administration is where most architects, or many architects, are involved in the job. And a lot of building designers and people out there don't offer that service. So a lot of people mistakenly think that building designers are cheaper than architects because that's not part of their standard scope generally. And it's about 50%. If you think about it, you're on site for 6 months, you're making all these decisions on the way through, and you're doing contract administration and legally protecting the client. And so that's why sometimes people get cheaper than architects. Make sure you work out the scope that you're comparing apples with apples and not apples with horses. Okay? Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, we'll commission you up to there and we won't get you to do contract administration. They end up getting to there and having so much confidence they won't do it without me. And I'd like to tell you a story about a job that I did. It's a $150,000 job. It was 80 sheets of drawings. The price came in, oh, sorry, it wasn't 150. It was a $650,000 job. And the price was varied by 150 grand. Remember I told you the story about all trades had to want to price it right? So I went through them all and I said, the electrician's too dear and the plumber's too dear. They've made a genuine mistake. They've doubled up their GST, they've allowed for something twice. Something's wrong with that, you know. I'm not trying to rip them off, be fine. The builder came back and said, oh, there's a couple $100. No, they're 10 grand out. Anyway, they both came back and they dropped the price $29,964. The job was still on budget, was now 30 grand less, which paid for all my contract administration for free. You think they were happy about that? Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, so how do you select the right designer? Should you use a builder's draftsman or a building designer or an architect? I'd like to put a bit of an analogy in here, and I don't mean any offence to anyone, I just think it's a good analogy. A pharmacist can dispense drugs, but that does not make them a doctor. A GP can do a general diagnosis, but that does not necessarily make them a specialist. Now, which is what a specialist, like a specialist doctor. Now, if you use a builder's draftsman that understands everything we talked about today, great. You know what you want, you can tell him, you can self-medicate and go to a prescribed solution if it's a nice, easy, flat block. If the extension fits with all the rules and regulations, again, you get close to the city, it's harder. If more diagnosis is required, and maybe a DA, then maybe you need some general practitioner advice, like a good building designer or perhaps an architect. Someone who actually understands all this stuff, especially if they've practiced for a lot of years. Now, when should you go to an architect? In my opinion, if it's a difficult site, it's sloping, it's awkward shape, faces the wrong way. If it's an expensive site, it's got great views of land or water surrounded by expensive houses and suburbs, then you need a specialist architect to make sure they protect your investment. Now, specialist architects are a bit like medical specialists. Not all of them are created equal. Probably less than 20% of architects have even designed a house. Some of them do high-rise, some of them do subways, some of them do other stuff. Until they're retrenched, they're not a little house. Some are experts in commercial. Now, you wouldn't use a foot surgeon to do heart surgery, now would you? So just make sure that the person you choose has some experience in that area, otherwise you may as well do it yourself. Okay, it's assumed to be easy, right? But like watching Animal Hospital or The Block, watching Animal Hospital does not make you a vet, watching The Block does not make you an architect. Okay, so you want someone with a good procedure, someone anal, someone has used 3D computers for a long time. Hey, check this out. Oh, you can't see. Need to move that. I've got a moustache underneath there. I actually got a moustache. What was I thinking? I'm glad that's hidden. That was well done, John. And then here, look at my little VDU. I was so happy when I got that 14-inch VDU. It was fantastic. But things have moved on now. I can't do it without two screens. And I've been standing up for 20 years, by the way. Not sitting down. I put the computer on my drawing board. That's my drawing board. I've been standing up for a long, long time. Okay. Okay, anyway, enough about architects, forget them. Let's move on.
What's a building designer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you want, we might hold that one to the end, because I'll come back and I'll answer that if you like. That's good. Okay, so how do I select my designer? Now, trust is the most important factor. Someone needs years of experience, just like a medical practitioner. If you're going to get your heart surgery, you're going to go knock the cheek spell, right? Probably, or the knee surgery, something that's important. It takes time to get it right. Now, I said before about why you might want to stay where you are. I've had 4 clients sell in 30 years. And I had one unkind person at one of these seminars say to me, "You only had 4 clients then?" Which I thought was pretty funny. Does anyone want to know why they sold? Nobody? Anyone online want to know?
Downsizing.
Downsizing? No? Any more guesses?
Moving into stage
It'll be so obvious. Move closer to their kids' school. Every single one of them moved from their fantastic house I designed for them to a rubbish one. To one closer to the city for their kids' school. 3 of them for the school, 1 for the university. So when I said about reason to move, I now say to all my new clients, "Where are your kids going to school?" And they go, "I'm not pregnant." And I was like, no, seriously, because when you had 4 clients sell, I now say where they're going to school, which is one of the biggest reasons I contend that you will stay in your existing house and not move. If you're in a school zone, they're like gold. They add value to your house more than the extensions. Another little tip, that's free. Okay. No, so you're a little bit ahead of me. So I said a building incorporating all these good designs we'll talk about will cost more. So will a good designer. Now, a good building designer possibly can do as good a job as an architect, who knows. You get what you pay for, but you also get what you don't pay for. So, I said before, it's really, really hard work. You need someone that's going to work really hard. Okay. The architect needs to be someone that's passionate about your project. Someone who will listen to you, even if you don't agree. Someone you will listen to, even if you don't agree. There we go, got that right. And the corollary, someone who listens to you, even if he does not agree, or she. Okay, so communication is the skill, is the key. Make sure your architect is up to date. So I actually meet here every 2 weeks with the Architect Small Practice Group. They're actually on the B&D website. There's a whole bunch of architects on it. We meet here to discuss things and keep up to date and help each other because we're all sole practitioners. And so you want someone that does that, we get a constant CPD over. So you need someone that's up to date and know what they're doing. Or alternatively, you can ask me if I'm too busy or can't do it or you don't like me, I can put someone that I think matches your job or your position better than say I would. And that's why I'm in the group. I'm happy to help other people out. Well, we're almost done. Now, hopefully I've answered some of your questions, except yours, which I'll come back to. And possibly you'll have more questions than answers, which is even better, because then you start looking for the answers for them. And some of them might be on our website, so go have a look. There's a plethora of stuff there. I've even got, 17 videos. So I've got a version of design your brand new grand design home in 17 videos. So some of this is replicated, but some of it is similar. So it's on the website. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room. Some of you think you can't afford an architect for your renovation project, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'd hope to convince you can't afford not to have an architect involved, especially for a forever home alteration. But to me, it's a matter of priorities. Some people won't fly unless it's the pointy end of the plane. Some people insist on having a new car every couple of years. But I'm biased. I think you're better putting something that gives you a return each and every day. Now, interestingly enough, since COVID, people have actually recognised their houses aren't a cupboard for sleeping in, but actually should be a nice environment that they can come home to. Every day, I've been in my own house for 30 years. 30 years ago, I knew nothing. And I look out and go, well, this is great. I'm glad I've built this. I'm glad I'm living here because then it gives me a sense of joy, the environment that I actually am in. So anyway, so business class flight will provide you a better life for 24 hours if it's a really long flight. A new car will provide you a better life several hours a day unless you're an Uber driver. It's going to lose 15 grand in a couple of years. So aren't you better off spending that money on an architect? I think it makes sense. So remember I said before about that client that had no money left? This client had no money left. And then they saved up and bought some really nice furniture that was commensurate with the quality of the house. So that was really good. It actually did happen. Now, that's about it. Hey, thank you, Zoomers, for sticking with me. That's really, really good. I don't know if I can get any questions from there, but I'll come back to your question about building designers. So it's actually interesting at the moment. The bureaucrats are actually trying to dumb down the legislation and make building designers and architects the same. They're always trying to do that, but it's really not the case. Architects have to study. These days it's a double degree, so it's at least 5 years. So it's a double degree to get that, and then we have to have 2 years of work experience, and then we have to have so many hours of experience, and then we have to sit for a registration exam. So it's a sort of a baby version of a doctor's type scenario, right? So lots of experience. A building designer can actually go to university, drop out and do a TAFE course. And they all vary in quality, but between, 6 weeks and possibly a couple of years, they are restricted on what height they can do, but the bureaucrats are trying to say they're the same, and they're not. Architects and building designers have a bit of this going on, and it's probably not, I don't know if it's the same as chiropractors and physiotherapists or what, but the reality is there are some building designers that have got lots of experience that are very good and are potentially better than some architects that used to do Kentucky Frieds and lost their job, right? So it's a matter of, horses for courses. So some of these guys are really good at high-rise buildings, which a lot of building designers aren't allowed to do. Most of them are restricted to 3 stories. So you can't typically generalise, but generally more experience. There's literally more experience, and we've got to jump through these hoops. Building designers do not have to, we're legislated to do constant CPD. I'm not sure on their rules, but ours are very strict. We've got to be registered every year. The actual term architect is protected by legislation because there's a huge amount of work that's gone into it. Now, it's not to say there's not bad architects out there. In every profession there is. When I went through university, I had people in my class that thought the 1% in 51 was a bit of wasted effort. They could have got away with 50, Whereas I thought if I got 85, there was 15% I didn't know. It wasn't good enough, So it's, and the scary part about that is you've been to uni, when you go to your doctor or dentist, you think, is there a 51er? It's a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it, So, did that answer your question?
It does. Another follow-on question. So, does an architect do engineering type designs, so when you pulling walls out and so forth, or do they go to somebody else? And how does that compare with building design?
That's a good question. Building designers can't do that. Architects actually can't do that anymore. I actually did civil engineering before I did architecture, but I don't have constant CPD on it, so I don't make any recommendations on that because I'm not constantly qualified in it, so I don't have constant experience with that. However, the good thing about it is I go to the engineers and go, nah, that's too big. We can do this better. I tell them how to do their job. So
They still have to rubber stamp it.
They still have to rubber stamp it. Yeah, but I literally design it and say, you've got to rubber stamp it, and it's like, nah, that's how design. So the problem with the engineers, again, is 51. If you go to the wrong guy, the interesting thing about engineers is, I hope there's no engineers in the room, they'll work it down to 97 decimal places, and then I'll put a factor of safety of 200% on it. Why work it down to 500 decimal places and put a factor of safety, an arbitrary factor of safety on it? And it's a bit like flood levels. And then when something fails, they put another 50% on it. So it seems odd to me, whereas a good engineer will really work that down and go, yep, that'll do the job. And probably if they've got 30 years experience, they don't even have to get a calculator out there. Just go, yeah, here's that. Yep, that's good. So does that answer your question? So no, you really want someone that specialises in that. But again, you get what you pay for, usually. I used to incorporate all the engineering into my architectural drawings, everything, and just get a rubber stamp, but I'm not doing that anymore. Mainly because the 3D process is a bit cumbersome, but the engineers haven't quite caught up the architects with their 3D stuff at the moment. I've got to convert it all to 2D so they can build it in 3D. And then I put it back in my model to make sure that it's actually accurate. Funny story, boring, boring story. I did a 3-story place on the coast and I refused to have any steel welded or anything. All had to be hot dip galvanized and prefabricated. I did a 3D model of it, sent the engineers who did a 3D model of it, sent the drawings back, and I said, that column is 137 millimeters out of line. Can't be. It's a 3D model. I said, it's wrong. And so in the end, after a lot of arguing, I sent the drawings back 6 times. to get it right. I imported his 3D model into my 3D model, and it was right on the 3D model. When the software converted it to print it out, it somehow made a mistake. He said, "How'd you pick that up?" That's what I did. Yes.
What software do you use?
Revit. Oh, you shouldn't ask that question. So I'm on my 4th bit of software. So I started with AP Design, CAD Soft Build, then Envisioneer, and then I changed to Revit, which I started on about 5 years ago. And because I've been doing it for 30 years, all the other software had stuff in it which was really good, which the new stuff, Revit's the best software out there as far as I'm concerned. The whole world uses it. It's 65% of the market. But I got really frustrated, so I've actually started another company, hired a software guy, and I've made a plug-in for Revit to make it do everything I want it to do.
As a comment, I guess the challenge for anyone who wants to build or renovate is to actually find the right skill sets in the professions that you require to be able to build or renovate.
Yep.
And there relies the big challenge, because that is such important on your PowerPoint is the trust factor and then the skill set factor that is required. And it's very difficult to try and find that, especially in this day and age. And that goes right across from the professionals who are the design professionals right down to the building.
Want me to make it easy for you?
Yeah.
Ask them for a set of their working drawings. I have, on a renovation, 80 to 100 A3 sheets of drawings. Now, if someone shows you 4, and in the old days, they used to do a little coloured sheet. They'd do the town hall on one A1 sheet with bits of coloured stuff on it. But as time goes on, and since I've got my new software now, I just do an extra sheet. So I've set up 350 sheets to automatically populate. So want a detail or review or something like that. Now, I must admit, 25 of them are probably pretty drawings. All the other stuff is technical stuff. So ask to see not 1, 2 or 3 sets of their working drawings and see how comprehensive they are. And on top of that, ask for the specification as well. So a lot of stuff should be on the drawings. A lot of building designers won't need the specifications on the drawings. Now, if that's there, in the order of contractual priority is the contract, specifications, then drawings. So specifications are actually more important. They override the drawings in terms of, so if you don't have them, you've got that missing step. And the reason it's there is to fill in the blanks so that when it comes to a legal situation, you say to them, "Oh, look, I'm sorry." And all I've got to do is say to Bill, "Look, I'm sorry, it's in the contract, mate. You should have priced it. My heart bleeds for you, but my client's paid for this. This is what they're expecting. That's what the documents say. Sorry, if I can help you out somewhere else, talk to me and we'll work out a way of making it easy for you, but that's what I want. I don't want zinc plated."
Just on the issue of variation, builders can make their money on variations as well. How do you control your variations in a renovation?
Oh, I'm going to be very careful here. Ooh, what's my PI insurance say? So there are particular contracts that I will and won't use. So there are peak bodies out there, and some of the peak bodies I think are very weighted towards the peak body and not the consumer. Sorry? Yes, yes. For example. Whereas I use an architect's contract, which is the ABIC contract, which is the only contract that's actually jointly signed off between the master builders and the Institute of Architects. So they've agreed begrudgingly that it was a fair contract. So builders will tell you that contract is biased towards the client and the architect, but in fact, master builders are signed off on it. So a bit of inconsistency there. And so you'll find some of them will charge, and I think the acid test on a good builder is what they're going to charge you on variations. Well, one of the contracts, 20% is standard. Now that is frightening. One of the other ones, 15% is standard, but everything's negotiable. If you've got a builder that says, "I'm going to charge you 10, maybe you've got a good builder. Just on that, it's a real trick, because if there's a thing called provisional sums and prime cost items, and what they are. So basically, I don't know what it's going to cost, I'll put an allowance in. This is when it comes back to quotes. Your whole project could be provisional prime cost items. I think it's going to cost that, I've allowed for this, this, and this. The classic one is every single house in the world has a problem foundation. There's always the first variation. "Oh, it's not what I expected." Oh, come on, everything else is clay, you know. And, you know, I don't have to do a source test to tell you what's explained there. Sorry, that's the standard contract, because I had to do that to get the job, to win the contract. But, but if you've got lots of revisional sums in there, the trick with that is, I've got some special wording on that which ties it up pretty tricky, but let's give it an example. If the provisional sum's 30 grand for some reason, right? And the builder comes back and says, sorry, it's 50 grand. Then you've got to pay the extra 20 grand plus his margin on the extra 20 grand. If it comes in at 20 grand, he gets 10 back, but he keeps his margin. So you've got to be really, really careful about this stuff, because you get, and then don't forget GST. There's 20 grand plus the GST on top of that, his margin on top. You get this compounding effect, and it can be really frightening. So my wording is very, very specific in my documents, and ends up having a lot of arguments. But I go, that's what it says. So, and generally if it's a builder I don't know, I'll make it very clear and say, this is what's in the contract. Before you sign this, be very clear that you understand that and you're happy with that. If he wants the job, he'll sign it anyway.
How does the client control scope creep?
Well, can you elucidate on that? What specifically?
Well,
sorry, can everyone hear that? How does the client control scope creep?
yeah. So you client's got this is a scope.
Yep.
And you suddenly at the end of the design phase you ended up with this scope, which then impacts cost.
Scope creep at the design stage or building stage? Well, scope creep shouldn't happen at the design stage, because if you're like me, you just pull out that little diagram of 4x4, 5x5 and say to the client, what's going to change? You brief or the budget. I do it all the time. So, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. You realise it's just gone up 50 grand. Now, an architect that's worried about losing the job might say, I will say that. I don't want an unhappy client. I watched a Grand Designs one, year ago, and the guy basically lost his marriage, his business, everything to build this ridiculous house that should never have been built. The architect should have said, it's going to cost you too much. But there's destroyed this guy's life. I'm not going to have that happen. I'm going to say, don't do it. I won't do it. You haven't got the money. It's not going to happen. Because nobody wins. How can you live with that? You know, so at design stage, the architect has to do that, and has to be, remember I said about, he has to tell you what he thinks, even though you're not going to like it, and you have to swallow it or walk out the door. You know, I've had clients walk out the door because I've said, this is what it's going to be. Great, not my fault. But you know what, when I drive past that property and it's vacant for years, or even worse, it's half built, and it does exactly what I thought was going to happen, I still feel bad. Like, what could I have done? What could I have done to avoid that? I made it really, really clear to the client that's what's going to happen, and they didn't listen. In the building thing, scope creep is stopped by good documents, good specification, good contract admin. If you don't have good, if you've got good documents and there's no one administering it other than the builder, it's the fox in the hen house, right? Very rarely. In my experience, I don't think. I mean, they're not taught it. It's generally not covered by the PI insurance. So again, part of the reason they don't do it, we've got professional indemnity insurance. It's actually really high risk, and it's a large component of our PI insurance because, it's a real nightmare. Some architects won't do it unless they do it on an hourly rate, because if you get in a dispute with a builder and you go to court, who pays for all the architect's time and you're actually doing that? I mean, I've had one job that went to court, and I actually said to the client, look, towards the end of the job, I said, let's just sack the builder, because what he's done there is wrong, and we're not going to win that. I said, pay him 30 grand, terminate the contract and move on. And the client said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take him to court. I said, it's just no, sorry, pay him 5 grand, terminate the contract, and let's go move on. And he went, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, you're just going to waste money on lawyers, which he did. He spent 30 grand, 35 grand. The judge said, pay him 5 grand. And took up a lot of my time. So now I'm really, I'm not going to be involved in this if you don't listen to me. So, you know, and that dragged on for 3 years. People get stressed, you know, marriages, I mean, you know, renovations are hard. Make sure your marriage is strong, make sure everything else is strong. You know, they are hard stuff, right? They will test you, and they'll actually probably bring you closer together. So that's some really good questions.
Is it sometimes better to actually up down instead of renovate?
More and more so these days, yes.
As far as
Yep,
cost
yep.
is concerned?
Yeah, absolutely.
Generally?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on the cusp here in Brisbane, so we're now actually seeing that it's just logical to, and so I call it the weight of evidence. So if I have a house and go, yeah, so a lot of that house have got smaller floor plans because they didn't have TVs and all that sort of stuff. So they're really hard to renovate and work. Some, interesting enough, 70s and 80s houses are one of the best, the most ugliest houses, but they're the best to renovate, surprisingly. I hated them, but I've done some really good things with them and thought, yeah, that's good. So you get this weight of evidence that, oh, there's drainage problems, there's this, all the houses have galvanised pipework, they've got full of asbestos, you know, so right up until mid-80s, anything before mid-80s is always on the cusp, all right? Some have more asbestos than others, but, you know, asbestos is 5-10 grand in there, and then you've got bad plumbing, you've got bad electrical, and certainly when I was looking for my kids, it was like, nah, money pit, and that was the weight of evidence. It's like, no, that's it. And in the end, we sort of went through, and the houses that we picked were the least worst. You know, others had like bad things. And this one went, no. Oh, it's not bad compared to all the other lists. And that was a real wake up because that's how bad the stuff that was selling out there. And you think they're getting good money for these crap houses. I was like, I wouldn't give them that. You're kidding me. The agents go, okay, look, this one for you. Wally, come have a look. Oh, it's 700 grand. What do you reckon? I said, well, it's worth 6. So these at least 100 spent on it. And they go, oh, okay, I'll tell the client. And they drop it 10 and someone buys it. And you think, what? You're crazy. Because they won't pay for someone to, you know, and the whole thing's an emotional, yeah. If the land's bigger and you can subdivide it, it's good too. But yeah, it just depends how good how old it is, how good. And also depends how old. If it's an old Queensland, it's got character, and you can spend money on character, which costs more. But then people from down south, like Queenslanders, you know, personally, they're too cold and winter and too hot summer for mine. But if you build a new house, you can get the thermal mass right, the insulation right, the electricity right, the Wi-Fi, all the cabling, the lift. So you can build a whole lot more stuff in there. You just got to get to that point. And that's where you've got to be totally non-emotional. The architect's going to say, look, it's going to cost you, because a renovation, as I said before, costs a lot more than a new house. So look at it now. You can buy, what, 4-bedroom. I have this all the time. You get a 4-bedroom new place, 250 grand, you know, 97 levels, 18 living rooms, you know, for 250,000. But on a renovation, you get a couple of rooms and a bathroom thing, you know. I had someone the other day that rang me up and said, we're looking at buying this house. And I went, no. It was like on a main road. So how to renovate this? It's a main road. So every time you want a delivery, you've got to close the street down, have the delivery truck, there's nowhere for the cranes, everything's got to be carried in by hand. So these are all things about smaller blocks that create, well, particularly if there's zero lot and the guy's got to lay the brickwork over the edge on the neighbour's property and look back, make sure not get on his property when he's laying the bricks, you know. This stuff adds to the cost. So in that particular case, I said, look, yeah, it had city views, big deal. You know, it's going to be a mistake. It's going to be a mistake because all these other things are going to come back and bite you. But you've got to have someone that's aware enough to point that out. Now, I was very happy that I had that knowledge to point it out to them, which is good. But a lot of people don't do that. So, yeah, no one size fits all. Let's look at that on its case-by-case basis. And then again, suburb. We're now at a point where you can afford to sometimes knock a house down. Again, there's intrinsic value. So if someone buys a house for 500,000 and the land's worth 450, is the house worth 50 grand? If you knock it down, it costs you 25 or 35. It's cost you 85 to get that block of land, which is why a vacant block of land sell for more. You don't have to undo anything. So are you prepared to throw away 85 grand to start again? But then again, it might cost you an extra 150 to renovate it because of basic problems within the building itself. So if it's really bad house, you can knock down better. So the better and uglier and worse it is, the better.
Do you do initial assessments as feed initial assessments?
Yes, I do.
Sort of
Yeah, I do. If I'm not too busy, yes, I do. Yeah. So and a lot of that time I can do it on Google too. So, but it can be, if I am involved, be warned, I will knock back a lot. So,
Have you, over your 30 years now, established a relationship with builders that you trust to take work like that?
Yes, I do. interesting times at the moment because since COVID, some trades are really, really, really busy. Supply is a real problem because everything's stuck in China, but some trades aren't. So, yeah, anything that we think we can do ourselves. So we can't do electrical wiring or plumbing, but landscaping and maintenance and painting and all that stuff that we can do ourselves, and possibly have to get tradesmen to fix it up. They're actually not so busy because we're spending time at home. It seems a lot of odd jobs are being done at home. Husband and wife get together and go, this needs to be fixed up. But yeah, certainly in busy times, boom times, it's really hard to get them a good builder. So I've had some builders that my relationship's 20 years with builders, but sometimes it's like I can't get them for 5 years. They just, you know, too busy. So again, it's a matter of lining that up. I try and line up the project with the builder, but that doesn't always work. And sometimes the client will introduce me to someone, and so that's an interesting process. I had one client that insisted on using a builder because his accountant had used this builder, and I met with the builder, and I came back and said, I'm not involved. I won't administer the contract if he's involved. So just, this is going to go really bad, and the guy's a crook. Just, no, sorry, it's not going to happen. That client used the builder, it went really bad. Cost him hundreds of thousands. His wife died during it. And guess what? His accountant got burnt, same amount. So it went really, really, really bad for both of them. And I still feel guilty that I couldn't talk him out of it. And I was pretty vehement about how bad this decision is going to be.
In current terms, what's the per square metre rate coming in for renovations?
Oh.
Just sort of, you know, as a means and figure.
How long is that piece of string? Interestingly enough, new houses are actually almost going down in price. They've been around about $1,000 a square metre forever, which is just madness. And so the only way that can possibly be with labour going up, materials are getting cheaper and cheaper or poorer quality. So to answer the question, I'll make it long-winded. A renovation will be 3 to 4 times the price of a new house, depending on the square meterage. So there's an economy of scale. There's a starting up on a project. So a lot of people go, oh, I've got this 150 grand thing. People have got a certain amount of money to spend. It's the same cost for the builder to get insurance, to set up the site, to get the contracts in place, to pay all the fees. So if you've got to do one room, those overhead costs are a certain amount. If the project's this big, that overhead cost is proportionally less. So on a small project, it can be 50%, just the setting up costs and all that sort of stuff. But on a big project, it ends up being 15. So you get an economy of scale the bigger the project is. So the bigger the better, and the smaller the worse, because you're still going to have the 8 or 10 trades. You know, 100 grand, 8 or 10 trades, there's no money in it for anybody, which is why they build new ones. There's no client to put up with, there's no access problems, there's no noise problem. They can swear, they can do whatever they want. They got complete access. They plonk everything on site next door. You know, so yeah. So yeah, $3,000-4,000 a square metre. It depends on the project. Queenslanders, yeah.
We're busy with the renovation at the moment. What I find interesting is what you were saying before as well, that a lot of it's labour because you have to break down as well. And we've been doing exactly that. We've been demolishing a lot ourselves and then just getting the people in and demolish. I had a look the other day and we were talking about an average bathroom project. They say $2,000 just for the demolition of one bathroom. And that's before you get anyone in.
If it's got asbestos in it, add 5.
Exactly. Oh yeah, of course. But I mean, you know, so I suppose it depends on, you know, so your renovation budget can be lower if you're willing to do a lot of that manual, you know, the hands-on, like what we do.
Absolutely brilliant point. For my daughter's house and my son's house, I was over there labouring for everybody, you know. So when the electrician got up in the roof, said, run all wire through there, I said, yeah, we can. And I lost about 5 kilos, I think, up in the roof there. And, you know, and the sweat was pouring off me, but we got it in there. And, you know, but it probably saved him, you know, $1,000 in electrician's fees. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, a small project where you can get in the market. You've got to have the right builder that'll work with you on that sort of thing, which is fine. But it gives you a bit of respect for what they do as well, you know. So, just how hard it is and dangerous. And some make more money than others, but yeah, small projects. And that's why kitchens and bathrooms, which, you know, bread and butter around here and bread and butter for some people are easy because they're just that little chunk. And you can put up with that and eat takeaway and all that sort of stuff. You're doing the whole house, the whole place is disrupted. You've got nowhere to hide. So I think that's a really intelligent groups. And these are the best questions. These guys are really intelligent. Really great questions. Any more online? No more online questions? Come on, someone have a go. Come on. Any more good questions? Come on. You've got that bit. Now just ask the question, because if you're this close, someone else wants to ask it. But they want you to ask it. Ask it. Yeah.
Well, I think that Revit, I took a look at it last night. It's way too complicated. Do you have any recommendation on a 3D kind of home design model just for a sense of how we can do that at home?
Yeah, there's several actually. Yeah, you have to Google it. But the problem with most of them are then going to be useless if you go to the next stage. So Don't Design My Home one. SketchUp is really probably one of the easiest to learn. A lot of architects use SketchUp, but it doesn't translate to really good working drawings. So SketchUp to me has been dumbed down, so it's really easy to learn. But for me, it's too hard to do what I want it to do. So because I want walls with plasterboard and insulation and framing, and it's far more complicated detailed stuff. So it's really good for block modelling. Block modelling and stuff. It's probably one of the best out there, but there's about 3 or 4. Just Google it. I have Googled it before to see some. It's top 10 ones doing it yourself, I think it is. Just something like that, you'll find it. But no, probably SketchUp. But again, most of it's not very convertible. So you know, I've done it in SketchUp for you. I'm sorry, I've got to start all over again. But that's okay. If you can get whatever you're doing, if you can get it exported to a .dwg file, I can actually bring that in and trace over the top. So that's good if you can do that. We had one more over here.
One question. You mentioned about kitchens facing east to see the morning sun. We moved into our property and lived there for 2 years to try to get a hold of where the light is, and you know, we understand it's about the sun in winter and summer. The east often can create so much light that you feel like you're getting sunburnt washing up, you know, that sort of feeling. And you know, the spheres are about, you know, normal size. Is it worth putting on those rollers that open up and shut and censor themselves? They're very expensive.
Well, interesting. Our kitchen is actually on the south, but it's all open to the east, so the actual sun comes in and gets you in the bottom part of your body, so you get all the light from the south, and it works quite well. So when I say east, it's probably more south in reality, so you do have to control that. Look, when I first started, I actually thought I could be passive about everything, so I hated fans and I hated adjustable stuff. As I've got older, I've actually, and because there's more availability, so you can get these pull-down blinds from Bunnings, like $150 with a crank arm on, you know, so put one of those in. I've actually done that on my verandas are perfectly for the sun, but there's an in-between. So between winter and summer, the sun's lower, and you can have the 28-degree days where the sun's lower and it comes in and you think, wow, this is hot for, you know, you pull the blind down and then you roll it back up again. Flexibility is great. I mean, it's like you go outside and you put a hat on. You don't put one of those caps on backwards. You put a hat on with a brim. So I think they're so cheap now. In the past, it was you have to go to some blind expert and pay them thousands of dollars and make it electric. And, I don't know what that's about. But you know, $150, and they're really quite good. Some have got stainless steel bits, and they're actually reasonably good, ridiculously good quality. So I think that they're a great idea. It's something that I've only recently embraced. So I thought I could do everything, but I sort of realised, nah, I can't. You know, the sun moves around too much. Good question. I don't like the block-out ones that just come with those little tiny slits, and you know, they don't need to be that complicated. They only just need to be, and besides the other ones, you can see through. So when you put them down, you don't feel like you're in prison. They're just like a shade thing. It reduces their heat significantly, amazingly, absolutely amazing, and colour as well. So white's going to reflect a lot more, but the darker one will heat up more, but it's more visible looking out. Whereas the white, people looking in, It gives you some more privacy, but it's less visible. It's really fascinating. You do balustrades on a veranda. If they're white, you feel like you've got more privacy. As soon as you paint them dark, you feel like you're more exposed. It's fascinating, but it's exactly the same percentage. It's an interesting thing the way our mind works, particularly mine.
We're looking at either renovating or demolishing.
In that order?
Renovation, then demolishing. Yeah. But we don't know what to do. If we demolish, we probably split the block in half.
Yep.
And build 2 houses.
Yep.
Is getting advice on what to do, is that something you would do for a fee?
Yeah. But be prepared. I'll tell you what I think. So, yeah, to me, it's not about, so a lot of designers are out there about getting the job. I don't want the job. I want to give people advice. You know, what I'm trying to say is, some people will do anything to turn it into a job. To me, it's not a job until it's finished and the client's happy, and that's a good job. So I'd come out and I'd say, look, you know, what's your modus operandi? Do you want to make money? Are you going to live in it? Ask the really tough questions. There's got to be a reason why you want to do it. And so if it's a financial decision, I'd probably go, yeah, chop it down the middle and put 2 on there. But if they're both facing west and they're going to be horrible designs, which is going to be hard to sell, and you're going to have to live in one of them, I might go, well, no, is it a lifestyle decision? Right? And if the blocks were facing in a different direction, I could probably do both. Does that make sense? So if they're both facing west and you split them and they both face west and they'll slide into the west and they're always going to be horrible, you know, it makes a huge difference. Where I am in my street, every house that we go up the street is about 3 degrees hotter. It goes down the hill towards the west. My house is beautiful and comfortable, and the guy 3 doors up is dying. So it's very site specific. So, you know, and this is the problem with units at the moment. They build all these units, they all face west, you know, because that's the way our streets are run, you know, and you think, how horrible is that? There's no crossflow ventilation. Look at that lovely veranda that looks out over a park, you know, and then you see them in the photos with the sun streaming right through and think, wow, that's going to be comfortable, isn't it? So orientation is absolutely crucial. In fact, to me, it's higher than the client's wishes. Aspect and orientation is actually arguably higher than the client's wishes. I will say to them, well, you want this. Yeah, you're right. The kitchen shouldn't be on the east. We'll move that over there because it's actually better. You know, we'll discuss these things, but it's really, really sacrosanct to me. It's important because you want these houses to be comfortable. You don't want an air-conditioned box, you know, and they're nice and light and they're in a lovely place to come home. So you can even put it up with your spouse.
I'm in the room.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Oh, wow, this is great. Oh, wow, you got an hour? PC or prime cost? Prime cost or provisional sum? Both. Okay, so a prime cost item is for something that's a bath or a toilet or something, which is a fixed thing. And so so a builder might allow $150, but in your mind, you want this one that's hung off the wall at $1,500, right? You've got a massive difference there, and this variation comes in. A provisional sum is a supply and fix, so that might be a kitchen allowance for all this sort of thing. So I manage them by, it's in my checklist. I have a list. So there's things I think should be provisional prime cost sums, but they should be minimised as much as humanly possible. And what I tend to do is I tend to find a moderate middle ground. So, for example, I wouldn't put $150 down for a toilet. I might put $650. And if the client wants to spend $2,000, that's their problem. But at least because they want to spend $150, they save some money. I know after 30 years they're not going to put a $150 one in. And if they want the dearer one, so and that way the builders allows a reasonable amount. I don't have to bump up the margin and the GST and the profit and everything else. So it's going to be close to the money. Some will come in less, some will come in dearer. So it's probably what I could live with. Yeah, I can live with that, you know. But I make it quite clear to the client that that's middle of the road stuff. So we don't have this ridiculously low price that's going to blow out. And it shows them they have to make some hard decision about what's important. Do I really need a $2,000 toilet, or am I just going to put waste in it, you know?
On that note, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. See you next time.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?